Shalom. All praises due to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem Racha Wadash, the Barnas, the elect apostle, bishops, elders at Great Millstone at Ruel. Shalom to elect Ak out there who's working sincerity and truth and not for vainglory in season out of season. Shalom to the men, women, sons, and daughters of the elect of the nation of Israel, which are the men, women, sons, and daughters of the elect of you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans scattered to the four corners of the earth. Just want to bring this out. The Apostle Tahar brought this out. You know, you had a Jake, so-called black man. He got locked up, for whatever he did, and the judge, so-called white judge, he sentenced him to 1,000 years in 7 years, right? So the Apostle Tahar was like, well, Esau, which is a so-called white man, he's going to be sentenced to 1,000 years in slavery. How to Jake, when he got so-called black man, when he got the verdict, of 1,000 years and 7 years, he started freaking out and crying and everything, But like the Apostle Tahar said, if he knew the truth, then he wouldn't stress that, because he would know that so-called white man, which is Esau, is not going to be here that long, He's not going to be ruling for all those years, And he's not going to be ruling, for a long time. His time is going to, what Apostle Tahar said, 6 months or whatever, but he's not going to be ruling for that long. So he would have been like, all right, man, shit, all I got to do is just, 1 year, maybe 2 years, maybe, So he wouldn't stress it. He'd be like, shit, man, we going to be out here any fucking way soon. Guess what? And the so-called white man's going to go into slavery for 1,000 years, All right? So, let's see if I can get that scripture. Yes, let's go into it. Revelation, the 20th chapter. All right, what's the Apostle Tahar went over? It says, and I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. Yeah, that's when the Dark and Middle Ages, when so-called black West Indian Haitian man was ruling in all of Europe. Okay, all right. It says bottomless pit represents Europe, and that chain represents them being the so-called white man being enslaved by so-called black West Indian and Haitian men. All right, and he laid hold on the dragon, which is the so-called white man. That old serpent, when you go in the book of Genesis, so-called white man is known as the serpent, which is the devil, which is the deceiver, and Satan, which is the adversary. This is all the so-called white man, and bound him 1,000 years, right? Okay, so, started, and I'm saying, like the Apostle Tahar said that, we bound this so-called white man for 1,000 years, that we had rulership over him. The so-called Negro West Indian Haitians during the Dark and Middle Ages, okay? All right? When the kings of Europe were ruling, which were black West Indian and Haitian men, was ruling over the so-called white man for about the time of 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit and shut him up, and set a seal upon him that he should deceive the nations no more, so the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loose a little season. You know, so that's what happened to the so-called white man. You know, that's what happened to him. All right. It says, let's go here. But the rest of the dead live not live not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. The rest of the dead is talking about the heathen nations. Okay. But Esau, when he came into the Renaissance, you know, for that little season, you know, when he came during the Renaissance era, you know, when he came into the Renaissance, the word Renaissance means rebirth. When he took down the black, West Indian and Haitian kings. Okay, they had queens amongst so-called black, West Indian, Haitian women, but you know, the woman, we don't really go into that, but you know, you had women sitting on so-called black, West Indian and Haitian women ruling on thrones and all that, but that's going off because ain't a woman supposed to be sitting on no fucking throne, man. Okay, only the men are supposed to be sitting on thrones, and that's how it's going to be in the kingdom. All right. Okay. So yeah. So, you know, this so-called white man, you know, he came back into power, but guess what? He's going to lose his power. You know, he's going to lose his power, man. And Israel, so-called black, West Indian, Haitian, Latino, Hispanics, and Native American men going to rule over him in the kingdom of heaven for the period of 1,000 years. Okay? All right? All right, so let's go back to what we was going into. The elder shall serve the younger. And, you know what I'm saying, like the Apostle Tahar said, that was during the time of David, when David had Esau as slaves during the time of the reign of the King David and King Solomon. All right, that's what it means that the elder shall serve the younger. Okay, and they're going to serve the elder because Esau came out first. Who's Esau? Esau is the so-called white man, and Jacob, which came up after, is the so-called black man that had all the 12 tribes of Israel, meaning you so-called black, West Indian, Haitians, Latinos, Hispanics, Native Americans, and Seminole Indians. Okay? All right? So it's time for the so-called white man to go into slavery. Okay? It's all prophesied. All right? Let's go to Genesis. No, this is Revelation. Let's go to Genesis 25 and 23. All right. 25 and 23. It says, I'll go to 22. It says, and the children struggled together within her. So you had Jacob, which is the so-called black man. You had Esau, which is the so-called white man. And in the womb, they was trying to kill each other, point blank. Okay? And she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of Yahweh. And Yahweh said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated And you see, that's what a lot of so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans don't understand, is that we are different peoples. We are different nations. Okay? You know, you got a lot of so-called black men talking about, oh, it's not about race. I just deal with the individual. You know, I'm not racist like that. But that's how Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai set it up. When I say Yahweh, meaning the Most High, who you call God, Bahashem, in the name of Yahweh Shai. He is the deliverer, which is his son, who the world calls Jesus Christ. Okay? All right? That's how Yahweh, through his son, set it up for nations to be separated, not for everybody to be all together. Black, Latino, Hispanics, and Native Americans supposed to be with each other because they're the 12 tribes of Israel from Jacob, and the so-called white man supposed to be with their people. Point blank. Asians supposed to be with their people. We're not always... listen, why you think the Mosai broke that thing up in the Tower of Babel? You know? Babal, which means confusion. All the nations were in one accord, but the Mosai broke it up because he didn't want all the nations to be together. Okay? All right? That's confusion. All right? The Mosai, Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai, don't want no goddamn Edomite popping your so-called Negro, Latino, Native American, Hispanic woman, man, and bringing back his seed through him. Because all it's going to do is cause confusion. It's going to cause you to start praising their gods and what they believe in. Okay? All right? And at a time, the Lord told, Yahweh told us not to even deal with the heathen nations. Now, there was a time that we could deal with them, but what happened? The men could deal with the heathen nations now, but at a certain time in history, the Lord said, look, if you go get this heathen woman, you're going to start following after her gods. And that's what happened. You know? Look at King Solomon. All right? He was one of the wisest men on the earth at that particular time. But guess what? He took heed to those heathen women and their gods. Okay? But in the kingdom, that's not going to be so, because we're going to be perfect. All right? And if you in this truth now and you deal with a so-called white woman, that's okay. If you deal with an East Indian woman, that's okay. As long as you don't fall in love with the bitch and start praising her gods. Okay? But that's a cautionary tale. It says, and Yahweh said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people. Well, guess who that's talking about? The one people that shall be stronger than other people, that one people is talking about you so-called Negroes, blacks, Latinos, Hispanics, and Native Americans. Okay? All right? You're stronger than the so-called white man. Okay? Spiritually, number 1 first, and physically. Okay? It says stronger than the other people. It says stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. Who came up first out of the womb? Let's read it. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red, all over like an hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. So, yeah, you know, Esau, which is a so-called white man, came out first. All right? Okay, he didn't come as a baby hairy, but as he grew up as a man, he became hairy and he was red. You know, that wasn't a common thing in the ancient world and the earth at that particular time. Esau is in the Hebrew, the Lashon Kodash, Ishashua, meaning wasted away is he, because he has no pigmentation. He has no melanin. Okay? So that was a rare thing to see. You know? This so-called fetish that you so-called black, Latino, Hispanic, and Native American women have for the so-called white man, that's not a normal thing. Okay? All right? That's a thing that's really, it's a curse. Okay? Not to have any pigmentation or melanin in your skin. That's a curse thing. You know? Now, do so-called Negro, West Indian, Haitian, and Latino, Hispanic, Native American women deal with Edom, white, so-called white women? Yeah, they do. You know what? But they can do it. You know why? Because they're going to bring back their nation, because the man carries the seed. All right? Just like I was watching Tazariot, Captain Tazariot, dealing with them, the so-called Rebbe's. I forget which show is on, and those two Amalekites were supposed to be rabbis. They said, "Yeah, I know you bring out Numbers 1 and 18. It goes by the Father." So yeah, that goes to show you, even them Amalekites, some so-called Jews, even they know that. But no, see, but it changes. Now it goes by the mother now. Well, where's that in the Torah? All right? You are who your father is. All right? All right? It says, and after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, meaning he was holding on Esau's heel as a baby, Jacob, the so-called black man, representing the pulling him down out of power. All right? Okay? Because eventually the so-called white man, Esau, he's going to be pulled out of power. Point blank. Let's go get it. It's in the Apocrypha. I think it's what? Second Ezra. Yeah, this is another scripture that the Apostle Tahar brought out. Second Ezra, the 6th chapter and the 9th verse. All right. See, Esau, you going into slavery, yo. I don't give a damn what kind of technology you got. It doesn't matter. What propaganda you put out there, whatever. The Negroes, Latinos that vote for Donald Trump and the MAGA hats, it's not going to matter. The sellout Negroes, Latinos, and Americans, it's not going to matter. Second Ezra 6th chapter 9th verse, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. What does that mean? Esau, you're coming to an end, and Jacob is going to be the beginning of this new world, which is the kingdom of heaven and righteousness. So Esau, you're the end of the world, which is the so-called white man. You're coming to an end. And Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. So Esau, the so-called white man, is going to be the end of his kingdom, and Jacob is going to be beginning of his kingdom. And Esau is a so-called white man, which is going to end, and Jacob, which is a so-called black man, which has the 12 tribes of Israel, is on the beginning of the kingdom of heaven. Okay? All right? All right, so let's, Esau, you are going into slavery. It ain't a goddamn thing that you can do about it. All right? Let me see. All right, so, I did that. The elder shall serve the younger. All right. So let's go into what I wanted to bring out on this. Let's go to Psalms. Let's go to Psalms. There's many other scriptures, you know. Just watch the video of the Apostle Tahar. I just want to land back off it. He read Revelations 13th chapter, and I'll read at the 10th verse. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. It says it all, baby. You know, it doesn't matter, you know, what the Chinese have the Uyghurs, the Uyghur people, and they doing all kind of atrocities to them, and you know what the Sudanese is doing to another ethnic group, what the Ethiopian man don't, because they ain't the people of the Lord. They're a bunch of heathens. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. This is talking about the so-called white man and the heathen nations leading the children of Israel, the sons and daughters of Israel, which are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, into captivity. So the so-called white man and the heathen nations, they're going to go into captivity because they're led, you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, Hispanics, into captivity. So there's nothing a so-called white man can do. All right? But I want to land back off of that because Apostle Tahar brought that out too. So I just want to go to Psalms. Psalms, you know. And this time is coming soon, yo. The world is going to change, yo. The world is going to be world changing for you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Americans, and the so-called white man, you know, because he's proud as shit. Let me see. I'm started. All right, I'm gonna get straight to the point. Okay, I'll go to the 6th chapter. I mean, excuse me, I go to the 6th verse. It's gonna be world changing. Oh yeah, black fatigue. You so-called white people, you ain't seen black fatigue yet, yo. Wait till Yahweh send his son Yahweh Shai. You're gonna really see so-called black fatigue. And it ain't about black people. It's about the 12 tribes of Israel, so-called black people, West Indian, Haitians, Hispanics, Latinos, and Native Americans. The 12 tribes of Israel, you know, 12,000 from each tribe. It says, let the high praises of the power Yahweh be in their mouth and a two-edged sword in their hand. Yeah, we're literally going to have a two-edged sword, a literal two-edged sword. Literally, to execute vengeance upon the heathen. Who's the heathen? The so-called white man, East Indians, Arabs, Chinese, Japanese, so-called Africans, Syrians, Assyrians, all the heathen nations. Okay, and punishments upon the people to bind their kings with chains. So you're going to be slaves. We're going to literally, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, which are the Israelites, going to literally put chains on you. You meaning you're going to be slaves, okay? To bind their kings with chains, and their kings with chains. I'm talking about the top elite of you so-called white people, okay? Africans, East Indians, Chinese, Japanese, okay? You Polynesians, Hawaiians, to bind their kings with chains and their nobles with fetters of iron, to execute upon them the judgment written, which is in the Bible. We just read it. This honor have all his saints, which are the Israelites, which are you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Americans, starting with the elect. Praise ye Yahweh. There you go. So Esau, you're going into slavery. You know, I know you don't want to. I know you don't want to do. I know you don't want so-called Negroes, West Indian Haitians, Latinos, Hispanics, and Native American Seminole Indians. I know you don't want to have them do to you what you did to them, but that's the judgment written. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. All right? So I hope you've been edified, and with that, shalom. Along with the rest of you heathen nations, you're going to be slaves under the 12 tribes of Israel too. Shalom.